and welcome to our Parental Alienation workshops. So today I'm going to talk about how parental alienation happens. I've talked a lot on the channel about, I'm going to talk about why parental alienation happens. I've talked a lot before about how it happens. So today it's going to be about why. I'm going to break it down into 5 parts. So the first part we're going to look at is you. What part did you play in the alienation? The second is your ex. The third is the child. Fourth, we'll look at the system. And then finally, we'll look at society as a whole. So let's start with you. So this isn't about blame, by the way. This is about awareness and self-responsibility and empowerment. So it happens in part because there's a part of us from our childhood that plays a role within that relationship. Now, usually from the work that I've done, it is a savior, rescuer role whereby you feel sorry for your partner and you want to save them, you want to rescue them, you want to make everything better for them. Now, as part of that, there's an element of codependency in there. They need you to do all of those things. They need you to sacrifice yourself. They need you to put their needs above theirs. They need you to feel sorry for them. But you also need them to need you. And I'm speaking as someone who has those dynamics within my personality. And so we get into these relationships, and from the start, that power dynamic is set up, sometimes overtly, sometimes covertly. Equally, sometimes it might be that we want to rescue them, but equally we might want to be rescued as well. So we might be the damsel in distress or the poor little boy that has been through an awful ordeal in their lives and is at breaking point, and someone comes in and is kind and caring, seemingly kind and caring, and wants to do all of these things for you and take care of you. So it might come in as the mother, father that you've never had, that parental figure that you've never had. What I'm saying is it meets a need within you at that moment in time. And so you start out with this belief that you're almost like a perfect match, like the bits that are broken in you they can fix, and like vice versa. Obviously that's not a healthy dynamic. We're not here to fix one another, and the key point in these relationships is they're not interested in fixing you. They are only interested in what you could do for them. And that begins to play out in the relationship. And you probably don't say anything for a long time. You can be very passive in the relationship because you learn quickly not to say anything, that it's dangerous for you to speak up. And once kids come along, you do anything you can to protect them. You don't want constant arguments. You don't want constant stress. So it becomes easier for you to just back down, for you to stay quiet, for you to let them have their control. Now, obviously, 2 things happen with that, and we'll come on to them in more detail. But one, your ex, or the way their brain works, then sees it as you giving them permission to treat them that way. So they carry on and they get more and more and more and more and more taking and controlling. But your children also witness you, that dynamic happening. And although that the other parent isn't, they sense on some level that that parent isn't safe, they maybe seem by their demeanor of control like actually they're more in control than you are, because it's been set up that way. That power dynamic has been set whereby they're in charge, you do as you're told. And so children need to feel someone's in charge. And so it has that knock-on effect once separation happens. Obviously, once separation happens, oh, my cat. She's just come to say hello. Obviously, once that happens, once separation happens, the loss of your children can feel like you have been, my ex used to describe it as they were his oxygen. and so you can't survive without them. And again, that plays into that initial dynamic that I said from your own wounds of no one else is here to fix us, so no one else should be oxygen. But the sentiment you'll all understand. And so when those allegations start coming in, when the gatekeeping starts to happen, or when the outright no, you're not seeing them happens, that blows your world apart, and you can end up doing things that go against you. But at the time, you don't know that you're acting out of pain, you're acting out of frustration and anger and confusion as to why the hell is this happening. They've always allowed me to be around the kids, or this has never been a problem before, why now? And you want answers, and so you might text them, you might turn up on their doorstep, you might try and ring their friends or their family and get answers and ask them to help you. All of this can play into a narrative that is set. So let's move on to your ex and the role that they played. There's more to that, and I have done a video about the impact on you, which again is in the Parental Alienation Toolkit, which will go through that in more detail if you want to look at that. So from your ex's perspective, they usually, and I'm talking about severe, my channel covers like the severe alienation cases, mild and moderate, not too difficult to deal with, but the severe ones involving personality disorders, that's what we're talking about here. And those personality disorders manifest early in childhood usually through trauma, neglect, childhood abuse, and that might be in lots of different forms from their own experience of being a child. They can then project that into the current situation. We call that transgenerational trauma. So they play out the scenario that they had as a child in this relationship with you, subconsciously, but it's true for them. They believe that they have to rescue themselves from that situation, but actually it's them wanting to rescue the child version of them from their past, but they can't separate that out. I've worked with alienators and they've made Freudian slips, like they said, they've called their partner dad or mum, and that is what is playing out. And so your ex wanted you because they recognized your rescuing, your ability to give, your need to fix things, and that vulnerability within you. And they knew that those characteristics within you, those personality traits within you, would meet their needs. So you became their supply, and they fed off of you and your emotions, because they can't regulate. And this is why I talk so much about the importance of emotional regulation for you as part of your healing, is because their inability to emotionally regulate themselves means that they ask you to become the regulatory other, or the regulatory object for them, their thermostat. So when they start wobbling, you go in and like soothe, you try and soothe that. Obviously when you separate, you're no longer there for them, so they need someone else. And this is when they bring the child into that role. They say to the covertly and without leaving a trail, and I'm sure there's a better way to say that, but that's the best words I've got at the moment. But they do it so psychologically that when you say out loud to anyone, this is what's going on, it almost sounds like you're paranoid, because no one can really see it. It's not surface level stuff. This is underneath, deep, based on, a child's need to attach. So that need for a child to attach is then manipulated as part of the whole process of alienation. And so it happens because your ex has this need. Your ex has this need to play either the hero or the victim, to soothe their own anxiety, to play their own trauma forward and get a better outcome for themselves. And that means you have to be the bad guy. and by guy, I don't necessarily mean man. I mean woman as well. There are lots of mums that are alienated, grandparents, siblings as well. But you have to become the problem. So everything gets projected onto you to soothe their own feelings of inadequacy. So there's three main parts, and again, I've done videos about this. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but for your ex's purposes, they have abandonment trauma. So when the relationship ends, even if they're the ones that end it and go off into a new relationship, they still see you as failing them because you couldn't give them what they needed and they had to get it elsewhere. That's your problem. You were the one at fault for that. Inadequacy, trauma around, and anxiety around not being good enough. So they have to project all of that out, and you're not good enough, you're the bad person, you're the monster, all of those things. And then finally, like I say, that transgenerational trauma, which is they're trying to fix something that went horribly wrong in their own childhood in this current situation, but without the cognitive ability to understand that is what is going on. So let's move on to the child. How does it happen from the child? Well, the child has a need to attach to both caregivers, you and your ex. For you, that is 9 times out of 10, that is unconditional. You're there, you're safe and you're solid, even though like I say, there is that dynamic that's played out within the relationship with maybe you've been seen as the lesser parent. So when you do separate, that child gets elevated up into that co-spousal role. The relationship can become quite enmeshed between parent and child. And from an attachment perspective, when attachment is conditional, which it is with alienating parents, based on what that child can do for them, then any attention that they can get, they cling on. It's like, I used to describe it with my ex as being, it's like you haven't been fed for months and then someone gives you some moldy bread and you're grateful for the fact you've been given moldy bread because it's better than nothing. And that's kind of where a lot of alienated children sit, although they wouldn't be able to verbalize that and it wouldn't necessarily show, but that's what's going on internally. Is any moments that they feel a connection with that parent, it's like the moldy bread. They're grateful, even though it's crap. They're grateful because it's better than nothing, better than the alternative. And that's ultimately how they keep it going. And that's why it plays into the trauma bond. And it's very similar to your relationship with them at that point, in that you're constantly going after moldy bread. You're constantly trying to do whatever you can to get that next fix because you're starving. And so then obviously the child can then get manipulated into that because it becomes the moldy bread becomes contingent upon them doing or saying something that pleases the alienating parent. So we're building on how this happens. And the next thing we're going to look at is the system, because the system that you're in, the court system that you will be in, the child protection system that you are in, I'm an ex-social worker, and there's a massive push for the voices of children to be heard as service users. Now, whether that be children that are in the foster care system or being adopted or in the private law system. And when an alienated child has been conditioned to say nasty things about you in order to get the moldy bread, then, and just to go back a little bit, that's Stockholm Syndrome feeling, that trauma bond of the moldy bread suddenly becomes, it's not even moldy to you anymore, it's like gold. You forget that it's moldy and you just think that it's the best thing ever. So you become grateful and you side with the person giving you that bread because you are so, oh my God, I'm beholden to you. So going back into the court system, when they speak that way, they speak so highly of the person that's giving them moldy bread, and the moldy bread isn't moldy bread, it's gold, that it's hard for professionals to see through that because it sounds like a very close relationship. What it really is it's psychological enmeshment and control by the parent. But it takes an expert to really uncover that. And by expert, I mean someone who actually does understand and, well, first off, believes that this is possible, and second, understands how that happens. And, you know, I follow the work of Craig Childress, like him or lump him, you know, he knows his stuff with regards to the DSM and the psychological framework. Again, you can argue for and against that, but that's what we've got. And there are frameworks within psychology to explain all of these behaviours. The problem is family court is a law bordering on child protection process, not a mental health process. And so even the description, and you know, it's great that CAFCAS have taken on, you know, the child impact assessment framework whereby alienation is described, but I agree with Childress on the fact that the terminology used it's very layman. It's almost like trying to get me to diagnose a brain tumor. I'm not a neuroscientist. You know, I'm not a brain doctor, clearly, because I don't know the words. But that's kind of what we give. That's the tools that we've got, is very basic, very layman's. And like I say, it's better than nothing. It's, again, a bit like mouldy bread, isn't it? But we shouldn't be overly grateful for it. We should know that it's not perfect. We shouldn't start to think that it's gold. But we can use it. We can use it as it is. But being able to find an expert who understands, like I say, believes the alienation exists and how that happens, and then is able to recognise it and ideally put forward the problems that creates between the child. Because what happens often is you might get an expert who says, and it might be a guardian, or it could even be a CAFCAS officer, or it could be a psychologist who says, yes, alienation has definitely happened. But what they don't do is say, and this is how bad it's going to get for the kid. This is the impact that this is going to have, the short term and the long term on that child. Because what sometimes often happens is courts will see a finding of alienation or alienating behaviours and still go, yeah, but they're there and it's going to be really hard to turn that around. And that is not good enough, because this is psychological abuse, and we're essentially, in that saying, we're not going to take this child from an abusive situation. We're going to leave it there, even though we know it's happening. And to me, like I say, background as social worker, that is abhorrent and totally against the system. But again, that is where we are. So, you know, there's a lot of problems with the system, and I'm not going to go into that this time. I'm just trying to give how it happens in that system is we don't have enough of the right people using the right framework and the right treatment models to stop this from happening at the moment. I know lots of great working groups that are trying to do that, but it's slow. It is really slow, because it's in the legal system, and the wheels of justice turn very, very slowly. Obviously, the addition to the domestic abuse bill of alienating behaviours is a step in the right direction, but again, it's really those layman's terms. What we need is a step-by-step procedure of, this is what happens, you know. If allegations are made and they're suspected to be false, or there's real discord between what one party is saying and the other, we need real good quality mental health intervention at this point. The oh god, what it's called? I can't remember what it's called now. DDT, I think it is. Dialectical model is the best at the moment that we have, because it's attachment based. So it recognises the negative attachment behaviour, so there's disorganised attachment behaviours and the impact it has on children, and has a very clear treatment pathway to it. but there's very few people in the UK that administer it, and unfortunately those that do get hounded and end up not wanting to do it anymore because their name gets dragged through the mud. And that is the risk with this area, is we're dealing with people who will try and destroy you, whether you're, no matter where you're involved in the system. Anyway, so the final part of that, and I'm big on systems, is society. We all let this happen because we don't say things. I hold my hand up that when I was a social worker, I had a case. I had to go out and do an initial assessment of a family where there were some concerns. I can't even remember what the concerns were, and it was just mum and kids. And she said, I asked where dad was, and I got told, I can't even, I think I got told that he doesn't want anything to do with them. And I just took that, because as a society, we believe that happens. We believe that dads just walk away. We believe deadbeat dads. And I now, obviously, years down the line, can't feel ashamed about it, because I didn't know then what I know now. But I wish I'd known then what I know now, because I would have handled that case really differently. Not saying that dad might have walked out and there might have been nothing going on there, but I wish I'd had a different lens to look through that case. And that's just one. Probably could talk about others, but that one really stood out to me. And so as society, we accept that we've been spoon-fed for a long time, and some of this is the way society has evolved, that mothers are more nurturing and are primary caregivers. We know now, because we are more enlightened, we work better with families, we have more technology to study emotions and brains and gender, to know that is a load of bullcrap. And dads are just as nurturing and loving, and more importantly, dads have equal value to their children as mothers. That no kid comes out the womb and is like, well, mum's more important, I'm going to go there. They just are like, I need someone, and mum, and then you grow up and you think, oh, my mum and dad are equal, and that's, I don't love my mum or my dad more or less. I get on better when my dad was alive, but that doesn't mean I love them or value them any differently. And that's how children in healthy families grow up, knowing that both parents have equal value. But as society, we don't always promote that, and that's in our maternity and paternity arrangements, and including like the pay for that, in the way that and I'm going to say this, and some people might joke, the pressure for mums to stay at home and take care of the kids, when actually, why are we not saying either parent can stay at home and take care of the kids? I think as a society, we need to move out of that mums as primary caregivers into a parent, and see things through that lens. But again, that's going to take time, and it's going to be slow. But that's kind of how we allow it to happen on that societal level, is that we have all these beliefs around parenting and who's the best and who isn't, and that plays, and it can play into that. And we use those stereotypes as well. So, to be gender neutral on this, we use hysterical women when, a woman might be feeling very traumatized by a relationship and has just about managed to get out, and now their ex is using the kids to continue to abuse and control them by saying that they're unstable and neglectful and alienating them from their kids, but and saying they'll use aggression. So we use those stereotypes against the parents' natural reaction to this situation. So yeah, there's a lot of learning around this, but anyway, I hope that you found that a fairly comprehensive guide to how alienation happens. Like I said, I've got lots more information in the Parental Alienation Toolkit, which is if you click the link in the description below. Thank you to those of you that have watched. If you have any questions, pop them and I can answer them now, or I will answer them if you're watching this at a later date. I will answer them then. And if you've got anything that you want me to cover on a video, then let me know as well. So I'll just give it a minute to see if any questions come through, and if not, I will say goodbye. And like I say, if you do have any questions, you can put them up later. Oh, thank you, Audrey. Much appreciated. Okay, everyone. So thank you so much for watching, whether you watch live or later on. Resources are available. Actually, I will just talk a bit about that. So the Parental Alienation Toolkit is pretty much everything we've ever spoken about, plus lots of resources from other experts in the field. It's a library, really, for you to go to, rather than having to search on Google and YouTube and everything. You could go there. It's not everything that's ever been said, but it's a really good place for you to learn as much as you can. Knowledge is power, as they say. What I also talked about was the court system, and through our work with alienated, mainly dads, but mums as well, we found that those emotions and those stereotypes were heavily being used, and in most cases were the momentum was already with the ex, through, because you separate and you're in a bit of a daze anyway, and you're thinking, okay, I just want to get things sorted, want to get the kids sorted, want to get her house sorted, just want to try and find some stable ground. Meanwhile, your ex is off telling everyone that will listen what a dick you are, being male or female, and you're maybe not ready for that, and so you suddenly get a position statement or a witness statement telling you what a horrendous piece of crap you are, and you're like, what? And you haven't talked about what you've been through, because you just want it over. You don't want to drag your business through the mud. You don't want the kids to be dragged through it. You just want, look, it's over, let's just sort the kids out and we go our separate ways, and that's it. You're actually interested in that, and so, like I say, you get this report, and suddenly, before you know it, this train has taken off with all these allegations, and you're running behind it going, no, that's all wrong. And when you get to court, you are so anxious, so traumatized, so emotionally dysregulated because of what has been thrown at you. Those emotions and those normal natural responses to what's happening can be misinterpreted. So Get Court Ready was written to prepare you, to say, this is what your ex is going to do, and this is how you need to get out ahead of it, how to prepare for false allegations, how to really understand what allegations are likely to be made against you so you can be ready for them, so it doesn't punch you as much, and also you can have the context ready, how you can identify your role. So going back to the first thing we talked about, your codependent traits, your rescuer dynamic, and how you can start to move out of that, and then how you can heal your trauma. So that's what Get Court Ready is, and it's just 47 UK pounds. And the reason it's so cheap, and the reason there is a cost to it, is because I've paid other people. So you get a Parental Alienation Survival Guide, which is 20 quid on Amazon. You get it for free as part of the program. You get access to a neuroresilience toolkit, which has everything to help your nervous system come back into regulation, to heal your trauma, so that you can present in a much more calmer state. Because remember, they will present as being very calm and collected and emotionally seductive. You will present as being all over the place, because you are. So neuroresilience toolkit will help you with those practices that you can do, like literally they're 10 minutes. So before you've got the CAFCAS meeting, you can go, right, I'm just going to do this thing, you're going to do this exercise. so I'm ready and I'm prepared, and so I'm not falling into that narrative that has been laid out. And obviously that costs money. I bought that, so you get it for free. So that's why there's a cost associated with it, but it's only 57 UK pounds. And it's all online, so you get to access it whenever and wherever you need to. And the book gets sent out to you in the post. It's a physical book that gets sent out to you. And so yeah, that's Get Caught Ready. And if you go to getcaught.ready.co.uk/parents, then you can check it out there. But it was designed specifically following on from speaking to so many parents who have been alienated and the common mistakes and issues that they faced, and solutions to those problems, basically. So there you go. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.